On today's episode of MULTIPULM Voices, we are continuing our Women in Science series with a conversation about what it takes to turn research ideas into real-world impact and long-term sustainability. Welcome to MULTIPULM Voices. I am your host, Chris Aguilar, and this is where research meets real-world care. MULTIPULM is a Horizon Europe project working on accessible integrated care for people with multiple chronic conditions in low and middle income countries, specifically Brazil, Serbia, and Turkey. Throughout the month of February, in recognition of the International Day of Women and Girls in Science, we're launching our Women in Science podcast series, where we spotlight women shaping integrated ethical and implementable science. This series is about visibility, ownership, and leadership, because the future of integrated care is being built by both men and women's voices deserve to be heard. Please give a warm welcome to Anna Palaiologk, founder of Future Needs Management Consulting. In MULTIPULM, Future Needs supports the project's visibility and stakeholder engagement and helps ensure results are shaped for real uptake, while Anna also supports the project as finance and legal officer, helping keep the work compliant, responsible, and on track. Anna, welcome to our show.
Nice being hosted here. Thank you, Chris.
It's a pleasure to have you with us, Anna. You've spent years bridging policy, business models, and research. When you meet a new health innovation, what's the first non-technical question you ask to judge if it can realistically scale?
Yes, the question would be why now? And that is also a major question that all the reviewers ask when they are reviewing a proposal. Because in order to answer this question, although it's just two words, you really need to justify the feasibility of the endeavor and the viability of the endeavor. So it may be a simple question, but it's really important to define at which stage is the innovation, and apart from judging whether the technical part is credible, everyone is always interested, is it like too risky? Is it not risky enough? And that also defines whether you're applying for the correct funding scheme, because there are different funding schemes for things that are too risky and then other funding schemes for things that are very close to the market. So that would also define a little bit what would I suggest to the researchers in terms of where to apply for.
That's an important filter, because why now forces a real world check, not just a scientific one.
Exactly.
And bringing that into the day-to-day reality of EU projects, in MULTIPULM, you're the finance and legal officer. When teams are excited about the innovation, what are the most common legal and financial blind spots that show up early and quietly become risks later?
Yes, not intentionally, but I have seen it in many project implementation stages. The researchers are carried away by the research that they're performing because yes, they wrote a proposal, but it's like not stuck in their mind that this is the proposal and I know it by heart. And they just do their research and they start to slowly forget what the proposal was all about and the KPIs that you set, and just doing other things. So that's a very important thing, to stay close to the GA, the grant agreement, which is actually the contract between the research team and the commission.
That's an important reminder. A proposal isn't just a vision, it's a legal commitment. And with a lump sum, the discipline around delivery becomes...
Yeah, in the lump sum, it's even more important because obviously you complete your work package and somehow the reviewer needs to be able to check that. And the milestones and checkpoints are defined by the KPIs you set in your proposal. So you absolutely need to, quality equals payment. So you need to comply with what you promised.
Zooming out from compliance into how you steer a consortium, when you're building a digital health ecosystem like MULTIPULM across very different healthcare contexts, what does good governance actually look like in practice?
Yes, so governance both inside the project but also outside the project in the health ecosystem means, for me, defined roles. Like if the roles are not defined, if the users and from the side of the doctors or from the side of the patients, they have like a chaos in their mind. What are the interaction points with the innovation? And then the government doesn't know where they come from. Like this definition of roles doesn't always come first in innovation project, but it's very important for the real life implementation, for a successful real life implementation.
Yeah, very important indeed. So governance requires clarity within roles, responsibilities, and decision making as well.
Yeah, yeah.
And if you were to layer onto the multiple reality that we're working in, the low to middle income country context, where do you see the most difficult trade-off between doing things ethically and safely and keeping the solution simple yet affordable enough to operate?
Yes. It doesn't actually matter that much whether it's a low-income country or non-low or the middle stages or, for a more advanced one. If you know what is the social cost and you have thoroughly calculated that, it makes things easier for adoption. So simplicity and clarity, like I said before, with the roles definition, so you also kind of understand who bears the cost in each case, and the amount itself. So what would it cost in general? It doesn't matter if it's a lot or little, you need to know a concrete number.
Yeah, that's an important reframe because it forces you clarity on responsibility, not just the price tag, right? So
Yeah, exactly.
And this is connected to something that we've talked about before in this podcast with EU projects, the difference between a good idea and something that has lasting impact. And it often comes down to what's agreed, documented, and delivered. So let me ask you this. What's one legal or contractual principle that you wish more scientists understood because it would make their impact far more likely to survive beyond the project?
It's definitely communicating the results. And when I'm saying communicating results, I don't necessarily mean making posts on social media because these are very short-lived messages. Yes, they are important for the moment or for an event, but you are not reaching enough stakeholders that you address via the social media. So policy briefs, for example, and meetings with stakeholders that are relevant to your innovation, who could be either early adopters or who could be more resistant to this change, are very important. So papers are important, but that is something researchers remember well because it is also of personal interest to them. But then things like explaining in more simple words what you created and how it can help someone is equally important because imagine that who is a mayor? A mayor is a person like you and me. I don't know, they are not necessarily coming from the health sector and they may be like being elected from a completely different profession. So how would you explain it to an engineer or someone, I don't know, from the arts? Like you need to explain it well enough for the innovation to have chances to be adapted, for the people to believe in it.
Very good point. So really impact depends on understanding who your audience is and who you're communicating to so that they can understand what you've done.
Exactly.
Very good point. Now, when you hear the word exploitation in Horizon Europe, what do you think it should mean in practice for a health project beyond just commercialization?
Yes, so commercialization is important not just for the companies who are in the project to make money, but to somehow reach the market. Like if the solution is awesome, but it's not in the market and you cannot buy it, it's not there basically. So that is one point important about commercialization. But apart from that, of course, there are many other ways to exploit results and not all projects are at TRL 9. So the data that you used, you need to make it as much available as possible for your experiment to be replicable, for your data to be able to combine it with other data from other projects to aggregate it and do more and more interesting research for many different reasons so that the innovation can scale to a system level, to a European system level or a global level. So data is really very important. I would say that software maybe is not as important, like to upload your actual platform that you developed or your application that also has benefits, of course, but on the other hand, any serious company that develops software would redevelop it with their own code. So that is the reality. So data is much more useful and, I don't know, sustainable to share than the software itself.
What's the biggest misconception people have about building business models in public health contexts, especially where budgets can be quite constrained?
A business model is a term that is used in business as it's defined, but many times in healthcare, the regulator or the policymaker is the one that provides the solution to the public. So in this case, the return on investment is not measured in euros. You do not necessarily measure the success of a project like you would in a company, in a for-profit environment. So in that case, the social cost that I also mentioned before is what is important, because like when you have people that escape the disease and thanks to the health insurance that they had and they didn't lose their life or like valuable productive days that they go to work, the GDP of the country definitely profits from that. So that's how it's measured in health, contrary to other sectors where, commercialization is the way to go.
So, Anna, as you know, this February 11th, we celebrated the World Women and Girls in Science. And we believe it deserves more than a day. So at least we want to extend it to a month. That's why we're with this campaign. And in our previous episode with Sofia Iosifidou, who also works at Future Needs, she mentioned you as one of her inspirations, a strong woman leader who's really breaking the mold and working in science and setting a standard for a lot of young experts in the field. But it's not always easy. So what would you say is a quiet trade-off that you've had to make as a woman building a career across high pressure environments that people rarely acknowledge?
No matter what, in the end, the woman or the mother is the main caregiver for their children. So when you choose to have a family, especially during the first years of child's development, it's very essential for the mom to be there. Many can disagree, but at least this is how I felt it. Like I felt like it's worth it to provide my time to my child rather to work. And of course, this has a cost, but I accept it. It's okay. And of course, that would also relate to something maybe not for women, but parents in general, that in many countries still it is not very easy for the father to step in, even if they want to very much. And even if the legal system is there, like in our case, the patriarchy or like the manly sectors, like the very, I don't know, they have these norms that do not accept even the legal requirements, and they may give you days or they may give you some hours, but still they will treat you like, oh, like this person didn't, I don't know, commit enough to the career and prefer to do something that they think is not worth it at home. Yeah, that's a major one.
It's a very unfortunate reality, and hopefully we stay hopeful that this will change and allow for the fathers also to step in and allow the women to both be caregivers and have their careers and balance both. And we know that mothers juggle a lot, especially mothers who own a business or who are business women. So a leadership habit that you could protect no matter how busy you get, what would that be?
So in research, I think this is a sector where people are mainly driven by passion. So they really love what they do. Like if they don't love it, I don't think they can be successful, because this is not a field where you can make like a lot of money. Like if you're not really like unicorn, the majority, like 90% of the people just do it because they like it. So being passionate about what you do and not, I don't know, being just like being there just 9 to 5 is something very essential.
Is there a sentence that you often repeat to yourself, a kind of mantra that you say whenever you feel a lot of pressure, when the stress is really high?
The stress is very high many times because this is a business with a lot of hard deadlines. But on the other side, I'm kind of, I know, relieved. And I think, you know what? I'm not a doctor and this is not heart surgery. And there is a way forward. Just relax and think about it. Just give it time. So this is definitely not a mantra, but like a calming reminder to myself.
Yes, what you do is very important, but fortunately, we're not in an operating room with somebody's life on the
Yeah. It's not like to the second important.
line.
Yeah.
Very good. Now we're coming to my favorite part of the show that we get to ask all of our wonderful guests. And it's a bit of a message to the future of science, which will definitely include the young girls of today. So, if you could imagine a brilliant, aspiring young woman or girl in Brazil, Serbia, or Turkey who wants to build health innovation but doesn't have access to the EU bubble, what would be the first move that you would advise she does? It could be about skills, networks, or problem selection.
Yeah, first to say that access to the EU bubble they actually have, and that is something not many know, that a lot of third world, they say third world, well, it's not always third world, but the majority of them are, countries do have access to Horizon. They are eligible for funding. So that is one message, important message, so that everybody knows and they can just check the eligibility of their country. And the second one is the network. So network can get you places. It's better, how do they say, to have 500 friends than 500 euros, right? So that is definitely one. Just doing like being great in your work and in your papers is not enough if you really want to succeed, in my opinion. So it's important to be thankful if somebody helped you, or keep the relationships that you have made at conferences, at events, during your career. And most of the relationships, yes, they are built on the quality of your work, but at the same time also your personality. So that is something not to forget, that being, just yourself is already enough sometimes. So don't be afraid to be yourself. They are people. Everyone are people. It's okay. You can relax.
I think these are pearls of wisdom that we can use in many different aspects of life. So thank you for that. And speaking about women leaders, what kind of women-led leadership do you think we need more of in the next 10, 20 years? This can be for builders, translators, coalition formers, or challengers. And why do you think we need this type of leadership?
Hmm. These types of leadership is something it's interesting to read about. It's like you're making a quiz on a social network, but in the end, it doesn't really matter. Like who you are is who you are. You change very little. So just capitalize on your strengths and use your passion as a fuel and just be yourself. Like if you excel in one thing, just go for it. You can still work on your weaknesses, but don't invest too much in there. Know your strengths and leverage those.
Anna, I want to thank you so much for joining us today and for all the work you're doing to keep innovation grounded in reality, strong governance, clear obligations, and the financial and legal discipline that makes delivery possible.
Good luck with the rest of the interviews.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you for being part of this series. If you want to support women shaping integrated care like Anna, please follow the Multipulm podcast, Multipulm Voices. Share this episode with your network and explore Multipulm's work through our website, www.multipulm.eu, as well as our social media channels. See you in the next episode. Multipulm is funded by the European Union. Views and opinions expressed are, however, those of the author only and do not necessarily reflect those of the European Union or the European Health and Digital Executive Agency. Neither the European Union nor the granting authority can be held responsible for them.